they were last year. Skip, what do you think?
Man, Prim, Stephen A., that defense to me is all the way back to what it was last year. So this past Sunday, we watched the Seattle defense suffocate Arizona 19-3 up in Seattle. And then last night, we watched that defense suffocate the Niners 19-3 in their new home in Santa Clara, California. And to me, Stephen A., I can't remember seeing a more convincing and decisive 19-3 in all my time watching football, because I never thought the 49ers had a prayer in that game. Colin Kaepernick held to 121 yards passing, and he was sacked 4 times and couldn't get any ground game going, and he threw 2 sorry, head-scratching throws that were intercepted by Richard Sherman. There was almost a 3rd intercepted by Richard Sherman. Frank Gore was shut down to only 28 yards rushing. Carlos Hyde managed 19 rushing. Kaepernick was contained, only 17 yards rushing. And Russell Wilson continued to go Russell football on pass rushers, spinning out, slipping, breaking downfield, making play after key play with his legs and then his arm. Now, do they miss Golden Tate from last year? Are they quite as explosive on offense as they were a year ago? I don't think so. And you can also argue that Seattle's closing schedule, is much tougher than San Francisco's. But to me, Stephen A., that team that I saw last night will wind up making the playoffs. And I believe that from what I saw last night, Kaepernick and company will wind up being the odd team out, missing the playoffs in that division.
Well, Skip Bayless, I said that about a week ago. That's why I picked Seattle to win this football game. I know that their defense is big time. I've been incredibly impressed by what I've been seeing. They were in Colin Kaepernick's face pretty much all night long. And but to me, what really stood out in my mind is San Francisco's offense. I even looked at San Francisco's defense, and I still don't have a problem with them. On top of the personnel that they already have, even with Patrick Willis out, this kid Aaron Lynch and Chris Borland, they've got a bright future with this defense in San Francisco. I like what I see in terms of the elements, the parts that they've assembled. Their problem to me is on the offensive side of the ball. The protection for Colin Kaepernick was highly questionable. You had situations right now where protection changes before the snaps were being implemented. The offense didn't seem to have any rhyme or reason to it whatsoever. They had less than 100 net passing yards through the first 3 quarters of this game. Even though I'm certainly not trying to take any credit away from Seattle's defense, because it is elite, with Richard Sherman and those boys, with a KJ Wright, with the Navro, with everybody, Michael Bennett, all of them. They are just big time. There is no question about it, and they seem to have their swag back, particularly over the last 2 games. But my question is, have they really been tested? Drew Stanton in Arizona, a backup quarterback, is not going to run roughshod over Seattle. When you look at yesterday and Colin Kaepernick, and look at San Francisco's offense. I told you Frank Gore appears to have lost stuff. He's still rough and rugged, and he's to be respected. But it's primarily because of what he's done throughout his career, not what we're seeing from him right now. No elusivity, what to speak of. Doesn't seem to be breaking tackles the way that he once did. Carlos Hyde was held in check. The big disappointment to me, Skip Bayless, is that if you think about this, when you watch San Francisco, okay, when you're doing check downs and what have you, you change the protections at the line of scrimmage. Well, most times, often than not, you're not going to be able to go deep. You're going to need to do dip and dunks. You're going to need to have tight ends out there who can perform for you so you can have somebody to give the ball to in short yardage situations. If you can't get Frank Gore and Carlos Hyde to come out of the backfield and be effective for you, you're going to need to do that. And once again, where is Vernon Davis? Nowhere to be found. 2 receptions for, 13 yards? Just abysmal. Every time this guy has to show up against Seattle, he does close to nothing. And this kid is too talented, and he's been around too long to be putting forth these kind of performances. I really think Vernon Davis's name needs to get mentioned more and more. Stevie Johnson, poor soul, couldn't get open against Richard Sherman, at least on 1, if not both of those interceptions. I'm looking at a guy like an Anquan Bolden. 3 receptions for 18 yards. Michael Crabtree, 3 receptions for 10 yards. No wonder Richard Sherman was talking smack to you after the NFC Championship game. My God, when you consider how heated this matchup is, what kind of rivalry this is supposed to be, the personnel on the San Francisco 49ers. It was the combination of not being able to protect Colin Kaepernick well enough and other guys simply not getting open. They couldn't get open. That's why Seattle has so much confidence against these guys. They know, they believe rather, they can lock these brothers down. And I don't see these guys stepping up and doing anything to handle their business. Richard Sherman and those guys are not talking the smack that they talked just because your defensive front four could get to Colin Kaepernick. They're talking smack because they know as a defense they can lock you down. Doesn't matter whether Colin Kaepernick is being protected or not. They have all the confidence in the world that they can shut down these receivers with their secondary. And to me, Bolden, Crabtree, and especially Vernon Davis, him more so than anybody, repeatedly seems ill-equipped to do anything about it.
Stephen A. Smith, you realize that just this past Sunday, the 49ers you speak of were trailing RG3's Washington Redskins 13-10 until 3 minutes were left in the game when they pulled it out 17-13. Yet you keep hanging in. You had them in the playoffs before the year, and even last week you thought they were going to make the playoffs. Are you still sure about that? Because I'm not.
No. And I don't recall last week. I know that at the beginning of the season I thought they would, but I don't recall last week saying that because I was asked a question about Seattle compared to San Francisco. And I said I'm going with Seattle, not just for the game, but to have a better shot at making the playoffs because I've been down on San Francisco's offense pretty much most of this season. I can't believe how anemic they have looked. I really can't. I will say this, though. Jed York, the CEO, calling out Jim Harbaugh and the San Francisco 49ers, talking about it's unacceptable. This man should slap himself. You have a lot of nerve saying that. That is just weak on his part. The San Francisco 49ers were nothing for years before Jim Harbaugh arrived. And last time I checked, they're still 7-5 with this loss. They haven't snowdived and just looked pathetic, you know, week after week like other teams in this league have looked. They lost to the reigning defending Super Bowl champions who just appear to be a superior football team. And for him to send out some tweet going off about how it was unacceptable, man, fall back. Maybe if you had a better home crowd, maybe it would have been more interesting. Maybe if you didn't move to your new stadium, maybe you had left the team at Candlestick Park where, you know, you could hear some noise and it could seem a bit ruckus. Maybe you'd have something called home field advantage. So he just needs to be quiet because I think it's very, very disrespectful for him to turn against his team like that and Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's got enough to deal with, and he's a damn good coach. It's just that they lost to a superior team, and they've got offensive personnel who I dare say, I'm certainly not accusing Bolden of this. I'm not accusing him of it. But by and large, you got an offense that seems intimidated by Seattle.
Okay. All right. But real quick, Prim, before you change the subject. Stephen A., remember, Jed York grew up in a family, the DeBartolo family, with his mom and dad, and then
I know all of that.
There's legacy there that he grew up with. So that's what he's reacting to, that the 49ers he knew under Bill Walsh, obviously, and all the way up into the Mariucci years when they were still very good. This is unacceptable given those teams. That's what he's talking about.
All right, but in the end...
but Skip, hold on, Brim.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at their record here. From 2003 to 2010, where was he then when they missed the playoffs every single year and they weren't doing anything? Jim Harbaugh has taken them to the NFC Championship game his last 3 years, and they're 7-5 right now. And because you don't like the way they played last night, you gonna call them out like that? I think that's wrong.
All right, but in the end, Seahawks, good win for them. They snapped a 5-game losing streak at San Francisco. So obviously after the game, they were very happy. So check this out. After the win on the plane home, Russell Wilson posted this video on Instagram. So for those that don't know, Bye Felicia is a dismissive term that we've been hearing a lot lately. Russell Wilson felt the need to send the following tweet after people suggested this was a shot at the 49ers. So you can hear that. So he tweeted... So sorry, I was talking over that. So they were saying bye Felicia. He tweeted afterwards, by the way, the bye Felicia video has nothing to do with the 49ers. We respect their players and team. No disrespect at all, of course. So guys, was this disrespectful to the 49ers? Stephen A., what do you think?
First of all, I don't think it was disrespectful for the 49ers in large part because of the 49ers' performance. They deserved to see a video like that and to hear what they heard, considering the way they were thoroughly outplayed. But if they're saying they were not targeting the 49ers specifically, I think it's believable considering the fact that you had so many people out there who spent a lot of this season, just sort of doubting the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, wondering if they had lost their mojo, wondering if they would get it back, questioning whether or not they were going to make the playoffs, etc. And then over the last 2 weeks, you've got them beating Arizona, you've got them beating San Francisco, 2 NFC West foes, 2 of the better teams in the NFC Conference. The Seattle Seahawks are just reminding the world we're still the champions, we're still here, and all of y'all that has something to say, just go on with yourself. We ain't got time for all that. We ain't trying to hear all of that right now. So I think from a very generic standpoint, I think that I think it's believable that they weren't directing it specifically at the 49ers, because there's a whole lot of people to point the finger at outside of the 49ers, because the 49ers weren't the ones sitting there talking about the Seattle Seahawks and whether or not they were still legit. That was the rest of us. So I think it's very, very believable that they were not talking about the 49ers. But if they were, so what? They had just backed it up. 49ers don't like it. Do something about it when you meet them again.
Well, I agree with your final conclusion, Stephen A. And again, I could be wrong about this, and I realize Russell Wilson tweeted later, no, this wasn't directed at the 49ers. To me, led by Russell Wilson, this chorus that you just heard of By Felicia was directed right at the 49ers, and they were relegating the 49ers, their arch rival, to Felicia status. They're just saying, we just left you in the dust. And you know what? I'm good with it, because they did leave them in the dust. And I think from what we've seen from the 49ers, they're struggling to the point that the Seahawks are no longer even fearful of them. That they're not concerned with the 49ers, even though the 49ers still get to go play at Seattle here pretty soon. But again, I don't know if you want to call it disrespectful. I just think they have lost all respect for their former arch rival.